You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show. The preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. Chris Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com, thechrisvossshow.com. And guess what? I'm on the show. My name's Chris Voss. I'm the host. You may have heard of me before, but we've only been doing this for 14 years. For hell's sakes, do I really have to tell you people I'm the host? It says the Chris Voss Show on it. You'll need to see my ID, I'm sure. Anyway, guys, we have an amazing author on the show with a brand new book that launched March 7th, 2023. Born Extraordinary, Empowering Children with Differences and Disabilities. Meg Zucker is on the show with us today. And we'll be talking to her about her new book and her life and her story, as well as her children's. And one of the stories she talks about in the book is bullies bullying her children at school. And I had much of that happen to me, as you can imagine. I mean, I do look like the guy you should shove in a locker. Let's put it that way. I have that radio face. But in the meantime, refer the show to your family, friends, and relatives. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, youtube.com/Chris Voss, and linkedin.com/Chris Voss, and refer the show to your family and friends by guilting them and shaming them to subscribe. No, don't do that. Just do it nicely and offer them cake or something. So there you go. Meg Zucker joins us on the show today. She's the founder and president of Don't Hide It, Flaunt It. I don't know. I tried doing that once at a neighborhood pool, and I was arrested. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that, folks. That's a bad joke. It is her company, Don't Hide It, Flaunt It, is a nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing acceptance, understanding, tolerance, and respect for people's visible or invisible differences, and the author of the latest book we just mentioned beforehand. She was born with acrodactyly, a genetic condition which results in her having shortened forearms, one finger on each hand, and one toe on each foot, which she passed on to two of her children. She's a Wall Street lawyer with over 20 years of experience in the field of it cut me off here, Meg.
Anti-money laundering and financial crime. All good.
There you go.
It's really nice to be here, Chris. Thank you.
It's wonderful to have you as well. It didn't transpose very well on Google Docs. My apologies there. So welcome to the show, Meg. Give us your .com so people can find you on the interwebs.
Yeah, it's so easy. megzucker.com. That's my author website, and you can find everything you need right on that site.
There you go. And what motivated you to want to write this book?
So as you said, I was born very, very blatantly physically different. And it was really a shock to my parents when I came out and looked this way. They had no idea that I was going to be able to live any type of a semblance of a normal life. Yet they empowered me and raised me in just every way to follow my passions, do everything and anything that I could possibly fathom. Maybe I didn't always succeed, but I mainly did. And so one of the reasons I really wanted to do this book, as you said, Chris, I gave birth to 2 out of my 3 children share extradactyly my physical condition. So I thought, well, I wish they would have written a guidebook for me. And in fact, I decided it would be a really great opportunity not only to share my stories and, quite frankly, some of the mistakes that I made, but within the book, there's at least 30 other contributors of parents of children with differences and disabilities who share their own nuggets of wisdom as well.
And I'm sure as a mother, that's hard to see your children get bullied in school. It seems to be almost a rite of passage, I think, in schools. Although it seems it might have gotten worse. I think people are just uglier and meaner now than they used to be. I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting old or something.
It's an interesting topic. I mean, first of all, I was never bullied personally for the way, for my genetic condition. I think we can also agree that a lot of times these days, kids are bullied for just nothing. They decide that they're different, and that's what they're going after. And it becomes more un-PC to pick on the kid that's physically different. But even within our own family, our son Ethan, when he was in first grade on the playground, got bullied for being different. Yet our son Charlie did not. And so it's really, you can have the same condition, same family, and that doesn't mean that, the experience is either guaranteed either way.
I was always bullied by people that seemed to have horrible home lives. Like they had
Mhm.
bad parents and mean parents. I remember some twins and some other people. There seems to be a handing down of bad parenting to bad children. I don't know. Maybe I'm just
Chris, that's a good point. I mean, one of the things I write so one of the chapters is called Taking the Bully by the Horns. And Ethan, my son, and that's been a while for now because he's a junior in college. So it's been many years. But we came up with a saying, which is happy people are never mean. And, once you sort of understand that and appreciate that, your kids to understand that, then they start to understand and appreciate that what's the driving source of this kid's cruelty is very likely not them, but other stuff going on.
Yeah. When I was in elementary school, and of course, one of the probably biggest changes to bullying is you can't really be violent anymore. But when I was in I think it was fourth grade, and I had someone stealing our lunch money, and there were three kids, but there was one gang leader, little leader, and so they would rough us up and steal our lunch money, and so I went home, and I can't remember if my dad or mom said it. Uh, and I was complaining to them, and then like, why don't you just punch him in the face? And I don't know if it was like, I mean, I had good parents. They weren't like, yeah, you resort to violence. But it might have been an off the cuff thing or something. I don't know. It sounds like something a dad would tell you. You just punch him in the face.
Yeah, definitely different times. Even my
Yeah.
husband, who has 10 fingers, 10 toes, physically, not different at all. He was the subject of a bully because he was shorter than the bully and things
Oh,
like
wow.
that. And to your point, I think things are much more aggressive these days, at least within the schools and
Yeah.
so forth. But I have to say, it's not to say that I haven't been subject to cruelty. I mean, I have a story in the book how I was just had graduated law school. I was working for a premier company on Wall Street, and I went on the subway, and this girl pushed me down and was mocking me with her friends for being different. And so it's not to say that I've had a bully in this context of a school event, and thankfully there's been sort of few and far between of those examples, but they do exist. I mean, that can happen. Thankfully, certainly from my experience, it was just few and far between. I can count them on my hands. So there you go.
So I went to school, and I was getting bullied, and something broke. Like you reach that breaking point, mentally. And I pummeled and beat the ever living crap out of that dude. Like
Gosh.
somehow I just broke one day. I think he hit me or punched me or pushed me, and I just snapped. And I attribute to whoever put that in my head. But you can't do that anymore. I didn't get in trouble for it. In fact, he didn't report it. But it's interesting to me. I live in a world where well, let's talk about this. Did you talk about social media bullying and the attacks? Because kids nowadays, it used to be you just get attacked at your local school, and
Yep.
maybe you can call someone's mom or the principal and raise some hell. But now, I mean, if a kid goes online to Instagram or YouTube, social media, it can be ugly and relentless.
Yeah, I mean, in that chapter, I go broader. In fact, I have a story. I know Madison Beer's mom, and she shared a story about Madison having to experience. I mean, she was just discovered by, and this story is actually not in the book, but she's very vocal about those experiences in terms of social media afterwards. But so I do touch upon it. But I also touch upon the fact that someone like Madison was actually standing up in person to a bully, and how important it is based on the experiences people have, how they can really, stand up and rise to the occasion based on their personal experiences, maybe not even being different. But on the social media side of things, I do cover it a little bit, probably a less than what you're suggesting, and mainly because this is, generally a book for parents of children that are younger that hopefully are not yet on social media. So we don't go there. On the other hand, I do include a story of a girl named Rachel, who, she did write a piece in the book where it is called "They Decided I Was Different," and a lot of kids were picking
Wow.
on her, both, in person and online, and she was having to manage and deal with that.
Yeah. It's, I've had a YouTube channel for 14 years, and the hateful comments that are on there. I mean, I think one time I reviewed a printer and someone wrote that I should, suicide myself because I'd done a bad review that wasn't up to their standard. And you're
Mhm.
like, wait, the value of my life is in your eyes is dependent upon whether I did a 3-minute review, good or not, on a printer. I mean, and the assembly of hate that I've had come at me, and some of it's well deserved because I mean, look at me. But
Well,
but no.
Chris, I don't. If people read the book, they'll know that I have this favorite mantra that I embrace, which is, "What you think of me is none of my business," and it
Mhm,
really exemplifies sort of how I live my life, how you live your life. Which is, you have to sort of let go of all the, consuming the thoughts, and focus on other people. And quite frankly, I know this sounds so silly, but once I got there, it was sort of this rainbows and bunnies life where I really don't worry about, people's judgments, comments, or anything. And it helps a lot in terms of, certainly it was, I had to navigate it because I look so physically and blatantly different. So,
mhm,
achieving this was really important because I wasn't always here. I used to hide my hands when I was a kid, or, even into my teenage years, in shame. Mainly, I didn't want people to stare. I wanted people to get to know me instead of it, if you will.
mhm.
But achieving that sort of mindset, again, what you think of me is none of my business, is such a great place to be, for sure.
Yeah, that's kinda where I had to be with it, and then YouTube, I think you get a lot of fat comments on YouTube. They're like, "You're so fat," and you're like,
Oh my gosh.
"Thanks for pointing out the obvious. Gee, wow, I just had an epiphany thanks to your information. I had no idea that I was eating too many burgers, that I don't have a mirror in my house, but thank you. Thank you, sir."
You're reminding me of something that I have written about a lot, even in magazines and so forth, about how parents should allow their kids to embrace the embarrassment. In other words, I've had families, whisking their kids away. They're afraid of, what their kids might say to them. And,
Mhm.
look, mom, did you see that lady? She only has one finger. But to your point, I'm like, I know I only have one finger. It's good. You're not teaching me anything, so we're all good on that. But
Yeah.
that's what it reminded me of.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at them and say, "Well, you have a talking out loud problem. Maybe you should learn to use that inner voice more there, little buddy." But, so let's talk about this. You give different advice to parents on, bullying and stuff.
Yeah.
Is it possible, do you feel it's possible, because you research this, to eradicate bullying and we can become a society of good human beings? Sorry, that made me laugh out loud because I know human nature. But is it possible for us to create a society of better human beings, or more tolerant, or we're nicer? Or is it a thing where, as parents, we just need to prepare our kids to deal with the ugliness of human nature and use it as a way to build character?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think anytime we talk in the largest, most generic terms, it's impossible to achieve, this sort of pinnacle of something.
Mhm,
But I think your question is really important. And what I think is possible, and certainly you had mentioned I run a nonprofit, Don't Hide It, Flaunt It. I mean, our programs are not only designed to empower kids that look or feel different, so that they feel like a someone from a something, but I couldn't help but wanting to reach the other kids in the classroom who used to run up to me when I was designing programs saying, "Oh, Mrs. Zucker, I'm not different, not me." We all have our own version of one finger to hide, or something about ourselves or our families we wouldn't want someone to criticize or judge or so forth. And so my answer to your question is, I think we can move the needle. I think,
mhm,
when we allow kids to sort of, you know shifting the conversation, not so much on stop being mean to this other kid, but more about themselves. What is it about you that you wouldn't want someone to judge you about? And so that they can connect on that level. I think
Mhm.
with that empathy, that's how we move the needle to get there. Again, I think black and white is impossible, but I do think that there's ways, and certainly through our programming at Don't Hide Up Flaunt It, we've been, really happy and really grateful to be able to bring in programming into schools and even community service groups to do that.
Is the onus on parents to try and teach their children not to be little shitheads? I mean, there's a scientific term, I think, human beings. But I mean, it's hard because I've been with one of my girlfriend's 3-year-old daughter who looks at the gal at the store and
Yep.
says that lady's really fat and says it, where everybody in the store can hear it. And
Yep.
kids have, I mean, you try and beat them on a daily basis so they don't do that, but they're still going to do it. No, I'm just kidding. Don't beat your kids, people. It's a joke.
So
I'm gonna get
So
hit in the
you
mouth.
asked if the onus on parents. I think there's a lot of it's almost like, all angles if you think
Mhm,
about it, in terms of the home. And I actually cover that those interactions and encounters with kids where,
mhm.
I believe let natural curiosity govern. I know I have one finger, the woman knows it. It's not comfortable, but at the end of the day, it is something that we as parents need to sort of talk about, later and just say, hey, how, pick that thing about yourself you wouldn't want someone to judge, and then use it as a learning moment, a teaching moment, if you will. And speaking of teachers, all angles also means teachers. I think there's a wonderful, wonderful effort by teachers across the country that really, so many of them try to teach empathy and focus on that, in the classroom so that there is acceptance and things like that. So I think there's a lot of people that sort of have a hand in that effort, and
Mhm.
it really helps to, teach these kids and empower these kids and help them sort of unite across the front on all fronts on that.
I did think of something evil I could do next time a kid calls me fat in the grocery store.
Oh yeah.
I can just own it. And I can, like you say, what do you think of me is none of my business. But I can just say, I just look at them and just get really down in their eyes and be like, I got this way eating little children. I'll be under your bed tonight. There
Well,
you go.
I in the book, I actually, and admittedly, although I'm not proud to admit it, I liken myself to a praying mantis, because
Mhm.
when people used to insert themselves into my life, and especially trying to help me, I would just bite their heads off. I mean, like, can I sign your receipt? Can I put your apples on, on the conveyor belt or whatever to purchase them at a grocery store? I would get so mad, and I wrote about this in the book, Chris, because
Hmm.
I actually had to sort of come to this epiphany that, as sometimes my pride was getting shattered when they were trying to do things and insert themselves into my life, the reality was I was actually thwarting kindness in a bad way.
Oh,
So that same person, if I bit their heads off, would, the next time someone actually really needed help, they were going to hold back. And I was creating really a negative downstream butterfly effect, if you will, on that
hmm.
front. So there's
Hmm.
a lot to be thinking about when we're reacting or behaving or doing anything, because it can really have that kind of impact long term down the road that has nothing to do with yourself personally.
There you go. Note to self: cancel terrorizing kids at the store.
Please.
Damn it. Oh man, I'll stick to ones on the plane that cry. So you talk about going from shame to shine. Tell us a little bit about that principle and how you're using it.
Yeah, so that's a concept that I thought about a lot, because as I mentioned, I was hiding my hands in particular, when people would pass me by in public. I mean, I'm super social, so I wasn't hiding my hands with family and friends. But from shame to shine is really based on the concept of, letting go of worrying about what people are thinking of you. So it's sort of in same regard. And in the book, I really help parents. Well, there's two things I do. The first is, in the first chapter, it's called Embracing the New Normal. And I'm really focused on the parents themselves before they even start to think about, raising their kids and empowering their kids. Really, are they consumed by others' judgment? Are they worried when someone's, looking at their child and staring or thinking things and not saying them out loud and so forth? And if they are consumed by that, then they have to focus on their own sort of from shame to shine, because, until they do that, how can they possibly expect their children to follow their lead? So that's the first thing. And then when it comes to turning to empower their kids, there's a chapter called Embracing Their Dignity, and that's or building their dignity, and that's really about helping the kids get and navigate to that point of
Ah,
sort of mental strength.
because you need those. You learn those tools from bullying. Like for YouTube, it got easy for me because I get paid if you leave comments or watch my videos. So if you want to write hateful comments, well, you just paid me to insult me. So that's always a great avenue. Um, that's how I squared it in my head. That's how I put it away and went, cool, man, more money. In fact,
Yeah.
sometimes I'd write something back to him that fairly nice, and then write back even more hateful, and I'd be like, cool, more money. So maybe the real thing is monetize people who hate you and bully you. No, I'm just kidding.
That's not in the book, but I'll let you write
Yeah,
that
that's
down,
chapter two,
maybe.
book two, maybe. How to monetize people who bully and hate you. But no, this is good. Giving parents tools, because I think everybody gets bullied. I know girls are really mean to each other in school, and I mean pretty much until they die. I think competitive and stuff, and the slights and, oh, your hair is this, and then men we don't really bully each other. We do a hazing is what we do. But when we're in high school, there's a lot, or probably junior high, or elementary school, there's a lot of hate. It's been a long time since I've been there, so I'm trying to remember.
Well,
Um,
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Let me ask you this: on Monica Lewinsky, Monica Lewinsky has this whole anti-bullying campaign, and I lived through the Monica Lewinsky scandal. I'm that old. Wow, that was 49 years ago. Well, no, wait, no, it wasn't 49 years ago. He was 49. Um, and she's really still running it, like since 1997. What are your thoughts on, is she adopting well to it? Is she, utilizing some of the tools in your book that she needs, or what do you think about her whole campaign?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really admittedly focused so much on her campaign. I mean, I think it's probably much more focusing on adults
Yeah.
than children. And my book and that particular chapter is really about parents and navigating and focusing on when they're raising their children. So I don't think I have anything to sort of move the needle one way or the other about her efforts. Certainly anti-bullying efforts typically are a very good thing. So
Yeah.
I will
Yeah.
say that. But one of the things I will comment on, and it's not about her, but it's just about this topic of bullying that you're talking about. It's so important. And, the reality is when kids are taught something, they're taught be nice, be kind, signs on the wall, choose kindness. And the reality is, what kids need, they want people to choose friendship. If
Mm.
a parent tells a kid, you know what, you're going to be nice to Billy, or Susie or whoever, that to them means, be kind to that kid. Just simply means they're either going to ignore them or maybe smile at them or maybe not. But Susie still wants to invite someone, to sleep over to her birthday parties and so forth. And so, interestingly, in that bullying discussion or chapter that I have, or anti-bullying, it's really, really focusing also on the needs of these kids and how we as parents really need to think about, okay, if we're going to encourage our kids, how are we directing them? Are we just focusing on them being kind? Is that enough? I would tell you it's insufficient for certainly for children that are different and disabled.
Interesting. Uh, do parents is tolerance, the big failure that these parents are teaching? I mean, certainly if you're a parent who's consuming certain news organizations or consuming things, or you have attitudes towards maybe people that are different, whether they're immigrants or other things like that, and you have some really jacked up hate towards those people and you communicate that around your children, do you think tolerance is the giant failure here of as a broad concept of why we have so many bullies and issues with this?
Look, I mean, I think it's a very, very large issue and in terms of tolerance, but it's to me the most important thing is, just really rooted in your own personal life experience with your family and what are the things that you all as a family wouldn't want other people, again, to judge or to criticize or anything like that, and really explaining how that feels for us and what we want, what we wish, how do we, that sort of generic thing, treat others as you like to, to be treated and so forth. And I think that it again, I don't think people should so focus as much, or at least initially in that family home, they can start with themselves instead of, worrying about, just focusing on others and being tolerant. That's a positive and good thing. But I do think it should start in the home. How would we want people to be tolerant of whatever makes us us? And so the kids can really, really connect with that.
There you go. You speak to Fortune 500 companies. Do you find there's a bullying problem? This seems like the most obvious question, but do you see a bullying program or different issues with inclusivity with people with disabilities and differences in corporate world business?
I think that actually, I'm delighted to say I think that there's a lot of people that are really, really focused on continuing to move the needle in that space, and
Mhm.
I'm just glad to be a part of the conversation and providing my own personal experience in that. So I really think that it's a really, that the companies that are inviting me certainly are interested in this and having the conversation and learning. So my experience is really positive in that regard.
We've had a lot of inclusivity authors on the show, and we've talked about inclusivity and some of the paths it's taking in corporate world nowadays. It's interesting. One of the things they discuss in their training courses and books and stuff. And I took one of the LinkedIn inclusivity courses. It is one of our biological problems is how we look at people and we assess them. Sometimes it's from a determination of breeding. Sometimes it's just a determination of danger, et cetera, et cetera. I went through my own journey after 2016 where I started paying attention to the conversations that were going on in my head when I would see people on the street and what assumptions I would make. And it was kind of interesting. I started really listening to what I was coming up with sometimes. I'd see a white guy like me who was dressed in a Harley Davidson suit or outfit and drove a motorcycle, and I'd make some sort of determination about his prison life, and maybe he carried a weapon, and maybe I should just steer clear of him, things like that. And so it seems like that's one of the challenges we have is recognizing there's that biological thing that's in there, and it's kind of designed for a good intention, a little bit, I suppose, but for the most part, it can really go awry because then you make assumptions about people and you really don't know who they are. And the essence of how people look is not the essence of who they are inside.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting comment because there's a lot of assumptions even about me and my own family. I mean, 3 out of 5 of us look visibly imperfect, but the challenges. Our daughter is massively allergic to nuts. She was just in the
Wow.
hospital last week, exposed to nuts, and when I think about what really, I mean, here I've written this book, and obviously it's super important, but the major stresses of our life is about her nut allergy and and things like that. And so I always feel like we really, really don't know what is going on in people's world or lives, or based on their appearance or otherwise. And and I know, I mean, Savannah, our daughter, will say, "Mom, people will just think, oh gosh, it must be so hard for your mom and your brothers." And truly, again, it's just an assumption based on a superficial image of, or view of what we must be about in our personal experience.
There you go. The other thing is the gaming world. The gaming world is there's a lot of bullying on there, and they don't really know what you look like visually, but they can be merciless. And I don't know, man, maybe we just need to train more parents on how to prepare kids better for it, how to build an internal structure of their self-esteem. And of course, childhood is so hard anyway. You're trying to figure all this stuff out, and teenagedom is a whole new epic thing of trying to figure out your ego, you're dealing with your sexuality, and you're dealing with becoming an adult. And I mean, that's just a whole mess in and of itself when it comes down to it. I would not want to do teenagedom again. Uh,
I think you're not. you're not alone, and a lot of people would not just go back to their teenage years for sure.
I do like 20. About
I mean,
20 is
maybe
where
20 years old, I guess. But, my teenagers, weirdly, I mean, I was, even though I was, hiding my hands, and oh my gosh, I went on my first date in college. And I didn't even so we went to dinner and a movie, and for dinner, oh no, excuse me, we just went to the movie, but I kept my hands in my pockets the entire time. And he's like, "What's wrong?" And, it's just an interesting, point when you're in that portion of your life where you're not, you haven't evolved, you haven't gained all the wisdom. Hopefully, you'll get, as the years pass by. And there's a lot of vulnerability and concern. And so I think that's why a lot of people, kind of hesitate when they think back to their teen years, because we haven't really evolved to the sort of strongest version of ourselves, or at least hopefully we've evolved there. And if we haven't, then we have work to do. We always have work to do. Myself.
Yeah, I've seen this species. We need a lot of work. Watch the news every night in Florida. So there you go. But no, I think this is great that you're having this conversation. You're giving people tools to help, empower themselves, empower their children. I know parents want the best for their children. They want them to succeed and be happy. And it doesn't, I don't think it really matters what country you're in. If you're a parent of a child, you have a love for that child, you want to see them succeed. But yeah, definitely bullying is something that, I mean, if I had kids, I'd be really, I'm pertinent to that because, like I said, my YouTube experience, my social media experience, growing up in fourth grade and punching out the dude. Don't do that, people. Don't resort to violence. Don't meet violence with violence. Unless you're in the United States, then we go around and do that thing around the country. But that's a world. That's another problem we have. But no, I think it's great that they have tools. Anything more you want to tease out on?
Yeah, I would just say, first of all, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And second of all, even though this book and the title is about empowering children with differences and disabilities, so many of the chapters, like, I'm essentially forecasting what they're going to be experiencing, and what they're experiencing is, everybody else and how they're reacting to them and so forth. And so I think that what I really appreciated, we got a review, a starred review from the Library Journal, saying it was an essential read for all parents. Mm-hmm. And that meant a lot to me, because I do, as I understand, people that have been reading it and thinking about it say, well, you know what? I don't have a child with difference or disability, but I do have children, and I really want them to get the type of insight I've gotten from reading your book. So I appreciate your having me on the show, and for people to check it out.
There you go. And thank you very much for coming on the show. I'll say this. The one thing I heard years ago from Larry King was something to the effect, I don't have the exact quote, but something to the fact that I'm always interested in people. I find people very interesting. And I ask them questions. Wherever I meet them, I ask them questions. Who are they? Why do they do what they do? And it's having those relationships, that mindset with people of discovering who people really are, or why they do what they do, or how they do what they do, et cetera, and not moving away from my narcissistic tendencies, which I have many, it's been a way where I've really been able to expand my mind and expand the quality of my life. I mean, this show is 2 or 3 people a day that come on here that are complete strangers to me. They have different ideas, sometimes opposing ideas. But me being able to talk to them, understand them better, and find out what their journey is. And it's sometimes their journey, their story has helped me in my story to make a better journey. And so I've learned from them. So just about everybody that comes on the show, and I hope my audience has the same opinion, is learning from people is a great way to figure out life and make yourself better. And that's how we learn. That's why we read books, TV, movies. All of these are stories. They're the great owner's manual to humanity. And so having that mindset, I think teaching your kids, you'll probably agree with me, teach your kids to have that mindset that everyone is valuable, and there's rich resources that you'll meet in people that will change your life and make a difference. And you just never know. And I get that every day, 2 to 3 times a day, when authors like yourself come on that have done, tens of thousands of hours of research, save me a lot of time. And I get that core essence. And, it's interesting to me. I get off the show and I'm like, wow, that person was really interesting. I learned a lot. That gives me something to think about today. And maybe I should be better and not, yell at the person at Starbucks today, like I normally do on Tuesdays.
Yeah, Chris, I'll just say one quick thing, which is, some kids are born disabled. Some, things, diagnoses happen along the way. And then all of us, as we age, ultimately will find ourselves with different types of disabilities, if you will, just based on the fact that when, the older people get they're not in their same sort of abilities that they were when they were younger. And so, if I'm able to sort of tap into that and a better understanding for people to think about, like you said, after the fact, I feel very honored to have had this platform to do it.
Definitely. All the more empowerment we can get and the message we can get to raise just better human beings. Look at me. You don't want your kid to turn out to be like me. Raise better human beings, damn it, people. One last question I had for you, Meg.
Yeah.
You're a big anti-money laundering attorney. Where's the best place to hide a bunch of money when you're trying to? No, I'm just kidding. I had to get that joke in there. Well, thank you very much, Meg, for getting on the show with us to me, and I'll bug you later after in the green room about that. And because I got like $5 here that I don't want the government to get. I'm just kidding. I'm just doing jokes, people. Don't call me. So Meg, give us your .com so we can find you on the interwebs, please.
Yeah, just going to megzucker.com. You can find all the information about, that's my author website, about me, the book, and even it navigates to the nonprofit as well. Don't hide it, flaunt it. So thank you so much.
There you go. And can people support your nonprofit too as well? The donations or
For sure.
corporate
It's on the
invitations
website.
and stuff? Okay.
Absolutely. It helps us create these programs in schools, community service groups and so forth. So we do even work with the veterans and disabled veterans and their families as well. So there's a lot of work we do. We're really proud of and appreciate the support.
Awesome sauce. Let's build a better humanity, better people, because I've seen us lately and we need a lot of work. Thanks for tuning in to my audience. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, youtube.com/Chris Voss, all those crazy places on the internet. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe, and we'll see you guys